So I heard you're thinking of taking a cruise on Ha Bay. Well, today you're going to learn everything you need to know so you can sit back, relax, and enjoy this new wonder of the world. So where is Ha Bay? How do you get to this coveted cruise? Well, most people go from Hanoi to Ha Bay, but the journey is not short. It takes about 3 hours in a car to get from Hanoi to Ha Bay. The good news is a lot of cruise companies offer a private or semi-private transfer. The bad news is that they usually limit the pickup and drop-off locations to Hanoi's old corridor. So if you need a pickup or drop-off at the airport, you're tough out of luck. That is, unless you went from the airport to the old corridor and then got picked up, but you get the idea. Now, once you finish your journey to Ha Bay, you might pull up and be like, okay, which one of these boats is ours? Well, chances are none of them, because after that 3-hour car ride, you will also need to take a 30 to 40 minute boat ride to your boat further out in the bay. The reason for this charade is mainly because larger boats are restricted to specific docking areas due to emission regulations and environmental protection efforts.
This is crazy. We're not even on the boat yet, and it's already insane.
Unlike the smaller boats, which are allowed to navigate closer to the stunning limestone formations of Ha Bay, which you'll pass on your small boat ride to your big boat, your cruise ship. Now, since I already know you have been doing your research on which boat to take, I know you know that there is an absurd amount of options. But luckily, I did an absurd amount of research. The key things to consider when picking a boat are the type of boat. So is it a party boat? Is it a family-friendly boat? A boat for couples? Is it important for you to cruise on a traditional wooden boat? What excursions do they offer? Well, I narrowed it down to 2 boat companies, the one I cruised with and the one I did not. So we cruised on Peony Cruises, which had 20 cabins. The boat had spa services, a jacuzzi, and pool. It also had a route that was a bit more well-reviewed than some other boat routes. Our second option was Orchid Trendy Cruises, which also had 20 suites. And overall, it was pretty similar to Peony Cruises, but it felt more luxe and had a stronger emphasis on luxury in its marketing. The downside, it was booked the day we wanted to go. Now, while neither of these options are traditional wooden boats, we found that the wooden boats were a bit older. However, the options we picked still incorporated that traditional wooden boat look into the style of the ship, which we really liked the look of, but didn't want to compromise for an older boat. As for excursions, both of their itineraries were basically identical, and most importantly, they both docked overnight in Lan Ha Bay, which from our research and experience made a huge difference in the overall cruise experience. This part of the bay was clean, quiet, and so incredibly peaceful.
I have no thoughts, and that is hard to do.
Also, since our boat had less cabins, it felt like it drew a more relaxed crowd. There were still some families, but it wasn't a boat that catered to partying or strictly one demographic, which we liked. When you're looking for which boat to cruise with, just make sure you read the reviews, look at the itinerary, and take note of how many cabins it has. All of those things will help give you an idea of how rowdy the vibe will actually be. But what about the hospitality? Now for this, I can mainly speak to my experience on Peony, but for my research, it seems like hospitality is a huge part of the overall cruising experience. But depending on where in the world you are traveling from, it's most likely going to be a memorable experience no matter what ship you go with. As for Peony Cruises, their hospitality was quite literally on another level. So we cruised in February and it was technically off season.
Who says you have to go to Ha Bay in the summer? Not I. This is pretty nice. I got my sweaty on. I'm chilling.
But when we emailed them to book, we let them know that it was not only our honeymoon, but it was also my birthday. And they replied back with an offer to upgrade our room and ensured us that they would make sure our stay was as memorable as possible. And oh boy, was it. From the moment we stepped foot on the boat to the grand goodbye, the staff went above and beyond to really make our 24 hours something magical.
There's rose petals.
And from my personal experience, they took the fact that we were celebrating to another level. As I mentioned, they upgraded our room and it was truly a treat. The room was huge, the views were absolutely stunning. The soaking tub was also a nice touch because you had a great view out of the window. The biggest con was honestly the balcony was right over the engine, so it was kind of loud and unpleasant. But oh man, did they decorate. There were 2 cards, one for our honeymoon, one for my birthday, a towel swan display, happy birthday balloons, and even rose petals. As our day on the boat continued, we reflected on our room and decorations. We were so grateful for all the generous hospitality and attention to detail. And then we got to dinner. Well, here was the staff's real surprise. They had put up a neon wall filled with balloons and a birthday sign. They even had a letterboard that said, "Happy honeymoon couple, Brian, love, Giovanna."
That's wild.
And as we sat through our lovely 3-course dinner, all of a sudden, the lights go down and the most intense rendition of Happy Birthday thunders in the room. And for a minute and 40 seconds, I was serenaded as the whole staff paraded around the room singing Happy Birthday to a music track, only to bring me a full-sized cake wrapped in a Chanel ribbon. I'm pretty sure I blacked out from the intense attention, but if this sounds like something you'd love, Peony is the place to be. Oh, and if you're wondering how I know the exact length of the Happy Birthday serenade, well, the cruise director walked backwards, filming a first-person perspective of the entire staff parading. Quite the time. Okay, so you get it. They know how to make you feel taken care of. But what are you doing stuck on a boat for 24 to 48 hours? Well, if you started doing your research, you might have noticed that most of the cruise ships have very similar activities. For example, most boats have kayaking, and a lot offer a spring roll making class. And our boat had both. However, since we went on the off season, we decided just to watch the kayakers from the boat because it was a little bit cold, and it felt like the right move since we were not in the mood for water activities. Although the people who did kayak really seemed to enjoy it, and they liked being encompassed by Ha Bay's beauty. But we did go to the spring roll making class, and the staff did a great job, but it was pretty anticlimactic since it was more of a demonstration than a class, but it was still really nice.
Okay, I can try it.
Okay, you can try it, alright?
Yeah.
It's quite big.
I made it a little too.
I see it in there.
Not bad.
Two other activities that some boats have, but not all of them, are squid fishing and sunrise tai chi. Both of these I was so excited for. Then I found out that it was not the season for squid fishing, so I only had this one photo to show for it. And if you're wondering, no, I did not catch any squid. It was fun, but not a reason to book the boat. And tai chi was at 6 a.m. and frankly, I slept through it. So here is some fun stock footage of people doing tai chi. As for excursions, this varies a tad depending on the boat. A lot of boats stop at a beach, which can be a little crowded and rushed, and our boat visited a cave on Catbat Island. Cameron and Brian described the cave as uneventful. I thought it was pretty cool. However, it did force me to address my fear of caves head on.
It's hard for me. Somehow. That's still nice. Yeah, my hair definitely shrunk. Oh my god, I think literally just from in the cave.
For the overall experience, I particularly liked getting off the boat to see something that is really only accessible while visiting Ha Bay. But some other cruises go to a floating village, and if you stay 2 nights on the Peony Cruise, you'll also visit Viet Hai Village where you can go biking. Lastly, they did have spa services on board, but since it was off season, it was only 1 person at a time, which meant that the slots were a bit more limited. I planned to get a massage, but ended up getting a bit too motion sick, but Cameron and Brian powered through and said it was nice, but didn't compare to some of the incredible spa experiences we had in Hanoi. Now I'm sure you're wondering, is the food even good? Well, it's not too shabby. I'm a sucker for a good welcome drink, so being greeted with a welcome drink and a warm towel started off the experience on a good note. Most meals are buffet style except dinner, which is a multi-course meal. My last course being a full-sized passion fruit cake wrapped in a Chanel ribbon topped with pretzels. Now, was the food the best I had on my trip to Vietnam? No. But do they accommodate dietary restrictions and preferences? Well, yes. One thing I will note is that drinks other than water are not included, so a lot of people did rack up a bit of a drink spill. They do have a happy hour, which helps, but we got coffee in the morning and juice in the afternoon, and those were paid drinks as well.
You're gonna be obsessed. Like if Sunny D was real. Like
From our research, the food did vary a bit boat to boat, but we didn't really see any reviews that made us feel like one boat was the spot for foodies compared to another. However, some did make notes boasting about their seafood feasts, so you might just want to inquire if you don't book Peony and have dietary restrictions. So So what else could you possibly need to know before you make your decision about what boat to book? Well, should you go for one night or two? While my perspective is skewed because we only went for one night, we did play a riveting game of Uno with another couple who stayed for 2 nights, and they both said that 2 nights was a bit much and that their main rationale was that you essentially get to do an extra excursion, but the rest of the experience is more or less rinse and repeat. Now time for the good stuff. How much did this cost me, and should you spend your money to cruise on Ha Long Bay? We paid $399, so about $200 per person, which includes the semi-private transfer from Hanoi's Old Corridor, which was $35 a person, so $70 for 2 people. This price also includes all food, activities, and excursions. I think all things considered, I would definitely recommend cruising Ha Long Bay. The views alone are breathtaking. Now, being on Lan Ha Bay, I do think made a big difference about our overall cruising experience, because I saw some complaints online about other areas being congested or not very clean, and that was not the case for where we cruised. So if you're considering boarding a ship on your visit to Ha Long Bay, I recommend considering Peony Cruises. And either way, I hope you now feel informed and ready to set sail.